She had the taxi idling outside, engine humming while she hovered by the doorway, trying to memorize the small shape of her daughter's hands, the curl of hair that always fell over one eye. The 4-year-old was humming a song she didn't know the words to, building a tower from blocks taller than her forearms. For a fleeting moment, she thought she could leave and the world would remain intact. Then she remembered the passport. It was supposed to be in her bag. She fumbled through the compartments, each empty slot a small knife. Panic rose like water spilling over a low wall. She had already kissed her daughter's cheek, waved to her mother-in-law. She had already imagined herself on the plane, notebooks and laptop balanced on her lap, thinking business and schedules. She left the taxi running, half a bag in one hand, the other tugging at the door. Her heart thudded so loudly she was sure the neighbors would hear it. The street stretched on, quiet but insistent, every sound magnified, the distant bark of a dog, the echo of a car door slamming. The house felt wrong the moment she arrived. The gate swung open with a creak she didn't remember. Inside, the living room was slightly off. A block tower toppled in a corner, the TV muted but still casting pale light on the walls, her daughter nowhere in sight. "Hello?" Her voice felt small, swallowed by the house. No answer. She froze in the hallway, memory flickering, her mother-in-law, forgetful but never cruel, the burnt pot from last month, the missed pickup, little errors, always correctable. But this was different. A sudden clatter from the kitchen made her heart seize. She rushed forward. The sight stopped her, her daughter standing by the stove, reaching for a pan handle, eyes wide and anxious. Her mother-in-law was in the background, expression tight, holding a cigarette inside, ignoring the child. The smoke curled in the air, acrid and suffocating. Something inside her snapped. She reached for her phone with shaking fingers, pressing 911 before her rational mind could pause. Words spilled in rapid bursts, precise and clinical, describing location and situation. The operator's calm voice was a lifeline. She stood frozen, counting seconds that felt like years, while in the distance she heard sirens rising. When the police arrived, there was no hesitation. They moved with clarity, separating her from the room and her mother-in-law for questioning, giving orders that were unquestioned, immediate, and binding. Through the blur, she caught sight of her daughter, sitting on the couch now, knees hugged to chest, small body shivering in relief and confusion. She couldn't rush forward yet, only observe, feeling guilt slice through her chest. She had left her there. She had trusted the wrong person. The officer's presence made the reality undeniable. Power had shifted. She hadn't needed to confront, hadn't needed to fight. Authority had intervened visibly and firmly, restoring safety with unquestioned decisiveness. Later, at the station, she replayed the last week in fragments, bedtime stories, whispered giggles under blankets, the tiny hands clutching hers in the dark. She felt the weight of her own misjudgment, the way her faith in her mother-in-law had been blind, and yet she clung to the faint relief that her child was unharmed. By the time she held her daughter again, in a small, quiet room after statements and forms, the relief was tempered by permanent change. Her child leaned into hers, silent but trusting. She stroked her hair and whispered apologies she wasn't sure could ever be fully understood. The journey home was still. Her daughter slept in the back seat, exhausted from fear and the day's chaos. She watched the streetlights blur past, thinking of the layers of consequence unfolding, legal procedures, family tension, the subtle, slow erosion of trust. And yet, her child was safe. That was a fact, a fragile victory held in silence. She realized the world had shifted in that single, terrifying morning. Trust had fractured, authority had stepped in, and she had learned how quickly routine can unravel. Hope existed, quiet and steady, threaded through the trauma, her daughter's breathing even in sleep, the possibility of repair. But she knew the cost, knew that life would demand vigilance, boundaries, and an uneasy attentiveness to those she once took for granted. And so she drove, the engine humming softly, a mind crowded with consequence and relief, navigating a road that felt longer than it had ever been. Each turn was measured, careful, because now she knew how easily the familiar can become dangerous, and how sharp instinct must be when ordinary mistakes hide extraordinary risk. She would never forget this morning. She would never forget the moment she had paused, the moment she had hesitated, the moment she had called. She would never forget that authority had stepped in, undeniable and firm, but also that it was her own love, frantic and imperfect, that had set it all in motion. Her daughter stirred, murmured something half-dream, and she exhaled quietly, not triumphant, but tethered to the fragile, complex relief of survival.